David Carter sat at the kitchen table, coffee growing cold between his palms as he watched Lily pack for her 5-day educational conference in Chicago. Something felt off. They'd been married for 8 years, taught at the same high school for 6, and he knew her routines by heart. But lately, she'd been different, guarded with her phone, working late hours, and mentioning this new PE teacher, Brandon, a bit too frequently. Now, as she meticulously arranged her makeup bag, David noticed how she kept checking her reflection, applying another coat of mascara, smoothing her hair. "It's just other teachers, babe," he said casually. "Not a fashion show." Lily laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You never know who you'll meet, David. Networking is important." She zipped her suitcase with finality, the sound echoing in their bedroom like a period at the end of a sentence. Their goodbye kiss was brief, her lips barely brushing his cheek. As her car disappeared down the street, David felt a knot forming in his stomach. The house was quiet, too quiet. He walked back to their bedroom and looked at their wedding photo on the nightstand. Had he missed something? Was he overthinking? David pulled open the drawer where Lily kept her planner, the old-fashioned paper one she insisted on using alongside her digital calendar. The conference dates were marked with a star, but something caught his eye. A small heart drawn in the corner of those days. Just a tiny detail, but enough to make the knot in his stomach tighten. That night, sleep evaded David. He tossed and turned, replaying the last few months in his head. Lily's sudden interest in fitness, her new clothes, her vague answers about staff meetings running late. And then there was the lingerie, the red lace set he'd bought her for their anniversary, which she claimed was too uncomfortable but had packed anyway. Why bring that to an educational conference? Around 2 a.m., his phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Your wife isn't in Chicago. Check guest list at Palmer Hotel." David's heart hammered against his ribs. Who would send this? A prank? A mistake? He almost deleted it, but something stopped him. He'd taught science for 12 years, and if research had taught him anything, it was to follow the evidence, no matter how uncomfortable. So instead of calling Lily immediately, demanding answers, causing a scene, he took a deep breath. He would investigate, methodically, with the same precision he used in his lab experiments. He opened his laptop and searched for the Palmer Hotel's conference registration. The site was public, listing all educator attendees by name and school district. David scrolled through the C's. Carter, Benjamin, Carter, Jennifer, Carter, Michael. No Lily Carter. He checked again. Nothing. His fingers hovered over his phone. Should he call her? No, not yet. If she was lying, she'd only construct more lies. He needed more evidence. David poured himself a glass of bourbon, which he rarely drank, and stared out the window into the darkness. Somewhere out there, his wife was not where she claimed to be, and he was going to find out why. Morning brought clarity and determination. David called in sick to school, something he'd done only twice in his career. He drove to their high school, Prairie Valley, knowing it would be empty during first period. He had keys to Lily's classroom. They often covered for each other. The familiar smell of chalk and textbooks hit him as he entered her room. Everything was neatly organized, just like their home. He looked around, uncertain what he was searching for until his eyes fell on her desk. The bottom drawer was always locked, just student records and personal items, she'd said. David had never questioned it. Now he pulled out the spare key she kept taped under her desk blotter. Inside were typical items, a journal, some photographs, extra supplies. But tucked in the back corner was a small velvet pouch. He opened it and found a silver bracelet with a small charm, a tiny beach umbrella. David stared at it, perplexed. Lily hated the beach. She always complained about sand getting everywhere. Then he noticed a folded piece of paper beneath where the pouch had been. His hands shook slightly as he unfolded it. The handwriting wasn't Lily's. "You're my muse. I can't wait to finally have you all to myself at our special place. The ocean will be our witness. All my love, Brandon." David felt his world tilt. Brandon, the new PE teacher, the one Lily kept mentioning, the one who'd organized the school's fitness challenge that had suddenly interested his previously exercise-averse wife. David's drive home passed in a blur. Inside, he grabbed his phone and called the one person he knew would help without judgment, Tina Reynolds, his colleague and friend of 15 years. She taught mathematics and approached problems with the same analytical mindset he valued. "I need your help," he said when she answered. "It's about Lily." There was a pause. Then, "I've been wondering when you'd call." David's breath caught. "You knew." Tina sighed. "I didn't know, but I suspected." Lily and Brandon have been having lunch together in his office. The blinds are always closed. I didn't want to say anything without proof, but... She trailed off. "I have proof now," David said, his voice steadier than he felt. He told her about the text, the conference lie, the note. "Come over," she said. "Bring everything you found." 40 minutes later, they sat at Tina's dining table, a laptop between them. "If she's not in Chicago, where is she?" Tina mused. Then her eyes lit up. "Her phone. Don't you have that family tracking app?" David nodded, pulling out his phone. They had installed it years ago, mostly for emergencies. He rarely checked it. Now he opened the app with trembling fingers. The loading circle spun, then showed a map. A red dot pulsed on the screen. Not in Chicago, but at Oceana Resort, 3 hours south along the coast. The exclusive beachfront property David had once looked into for their 10th anniversary. Too expensive, he'd decided. Apparently not too expensive for a romantic getaway with Brandon. "We need to go there," David said, surprising himself with his calm. Tina looked concerned. "Are you sure? You could just call her, confront her from here." David shook his head. "No. I need to see it with my own eyes. I need them to know that I know." There was something hardening inside him, not just pain, but resolve. He wouldn't be made a fool of. "I'll drive," Tina offered. "You're in no state to." On the journey south, they formulated a plan. Not a dramatic confrontation. David wasn't interested in creating a scene that would only embarrass himself further, but something more measured. More impactful. "They've taken away your dignity," Tina said as they watched the coastline appear on the horizon. "Taking it back is your right." They arrived at Oceana Resort just after 4 p.m. The sprawling white building gleamed in the late afternoon sun, palm trees swaying gently in the ocean breeze. At reception, David smiled pleasantly. "I'd like to surprise my wife. She's staying here with a colleague for a conference. Could you tell me their room number?" Lily Carter, or possibly under Brandon Reeves. The receptionist hesitated. "Sir, we can't give out room." David slid his driver's license across the counter. "Please. It's our anniversary tomorrow. I've come all this way." The young woman's expression softened. She glanced at her computer. "Room 714. But please, I didn't tell you." "Thank you," David said. "One more thing. Do you have any rooms available near theirs?" Room 712 overlooked the same stretch of pristine beach as Lily and Brandon's suite. The irony wasn't lost on David. He was paying premium rates for an ocean view he couldn't appreciate, just to be near the wife who was betraying him. Tina set up her laptop on the small desk. "Are you absolutely certain you want to do this?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. David nodded. "I'm not going to scream or throw things. I just want the truth, and I want it documented." They had stopped to purchase 2 small recording devices on the way. David checked his watch. It was nearly 5:30 p.m. "They'll probably head to dinner soon," he said. "Most of the resort restaurants open at 6. Sure enough, at 5:45, they heard movement next door, laughter, the soft murmur of intimate conversation. David positioned himself by the connecting wall, listening. "You drive me wild in that red number," Brandon's voice drifted through. "I love how you've kept it just for me." David closed his eyes briefly. The red lingerie. His anniversary gift to her, now part of their betrayal. He waited until he heard the hotel room door open and close. Then he stepped into the hallway, Tina behind him with one of the recording devices already running. They watched from around the corner as Lily and Brandon walked toward the elevator, his arm around her waist, her head resting on his shoulder. They looked happy, carefree, like they weren't destroying someone's world. David waited 5 minutes, then returned to their room. He slipped the keycard that the sympathetic receptionist had provided into the door of room 714. Inside, evidence of their affair was everywhere: champagne bottles, scattered clothing, Lily's red lingerie draped over a chair. David took photos, his hands surprisingly steady. This was no longer about emotion. This was about evidence. Just after 8 p.m., Lily and Brandon returned to their room, laughing as they fumbled with the keycard. When the door swung open, David was sitting in the armchair by the window, Tina standing quietly by the desk. The laughter died instantly. Lily's face drained of color. "David?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What? How?" Brandon recovered first, stepping forward with his hand extended as if this were some normal social call. "David, I can explain." David raised his hand, silencing him. "Sit down. Both of you." Something in his tone, calm, controlled, but with an edge of steel, made them comply immediately. "Chicago looks beautiful this time of year," David said conversationally, gesturing to the ocean view. "The Palmer Hotel must have amazing educational seminars." Lily began to cry, mascara tracking down her cheeks. "David, please, it's not what you think." "Stop," he said, not raising his voice but with such authority that she fell silent. "Here's what's going to happen. I have documented everything. The lies, the hotel booking, your intimate moments. I'm not interested in your excuses or explanations." He pulled 2 pieces of paper from his briefcase. "These are written admissions of your affair. You're going to sign them." Brandon scoffed. "We don't have to sign anything." David smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're right, you don't. But tomorrow morning, I'll be meeting with Principal Hargrove and the school board. Without your signatures, I'll simply have to rely on these recordings, photos, and hotel documentation. I wonder how that will impact your careers. The school has a strict policy against colleague relationships, especially undisclosed ones." The silence in the room was absolute. Brandon looked at Lily, who had stopped crying and now seemed frozen in shock. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "You'll ruin us." David leaned forward. "You didn't seem concerned about ruining me when you were planning this getaway. When you lied to my face. When you took the lingerie I bought you for our anniversary and wore it for him." His voice remained steady, but the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. "Sign the papers. Then we'll talk about what happens next." Reluctantly, they signed. Tina, acting as witness, took the documents and tucked them safely into her purse. "Now," David continued, "we're going to have dinner, the 3 of us. Tina has a reservation at the Sea Glass restaurant downstairs in 30 minutes. Don't worry about changing. You both look lovely." Brandon started to protest, but David cut him off. "This isn't a request. This is the consequence of your choices." In the elevator ride down, no one spoke. The tension was palpable. Lily kept glancing at David, tears threatening again, but he stared straight ahead, his face impassive. At the restaurant, they were seated at a prime table overlooking the illuminated pool deck. A waiter brought menus and took their drink orders. To anyone watching, they might have appeared to be 2 couples enjoying a beautiful evening. But underneath the table, David was setting up his phone, carefully positioning it to capture all four of them. He opened the Prairie Valley High School Parent-Teacher Communication Group, a social media platform where announcements were shared with the entire school community, and quietly hit the Go Live button. "So," David said, his voice carrying clearly in the phone's microphone, "how long have you two been fucking behind my back?" The abrupt vulgarity from the usually measured science teacher caused heads to turn at nearby tables. Lily dropped her water glass, sending it shattering across the white tablecloth. Brandon's face flushed crimson. "David, there are people here, yes," David agreed calmly. "People. Just like there are people watching us right now." He turned his phone screen toward them, showing the live stream in progress. The viewer count was already climbing rapidly. Parents, colleagues, students, all watching in real time. "Tell them," David insisted. "Tell everyone how you lied about a Chicago conference to spend 5 days at a luxury resort with another man. Tell them how you signed a confession just minutes ago." Lily's hands were shaking violently now. "David, please stop this. We can talk privately, like you talked privately about me." David's composure finally cracked slightly. "Like you two laughed about fooling me? Making me look like an idiot while the whole school probably whispered behind my back." Brandon reached for the phone. "This is insane. Turn it off." David moved it out of reach. "The school board takes ethics very seriously, doesn't it, Brandon? I wonder how they'll feel about 2 teachers lying to administration, falsifying leave requests, conducting an illicit affair while being role models to impressionable teenagers." The comment section on the live stream was exploding. Notifications were flooding Lily's phone, which buzzed incessantly on the table. She glimpsed messages from colleagues, parents, even students. The public exposure she'd feared was happening in real time, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The remainder of the dinner passed in excruciating silence. David ordered and ate calmly, maintaining the live stream the entire time, occasionally offering commentary. "For those just joining us, my wife Lily claimed to be at an educational conference in Chicago. Instead, she's here at Oceana Resort with our colleague Brandon Reeves. They've both signed confessions acknowledging their affair." By dessert, the stream had over 2,000 viewers, practically the entire school community and beyond. Brandon had long since given up trying to interfere, sitting with his head bowed, occasionally checking his own phone, which was similarly flooded with notifications. Lily had stopped crying and now sat in a state of numb shock. When the check came, David paid for all 4 meals without comment. As they stood to leave, he finally ended the live stream, but not before saying, "Thank you all for witnessing this moment of truth. Integrity matters, especially for those entrusted with educating our children." In the lobby, Brandon finally found his voice. "You've destroyed us both. Are you happy now?" David regarded him with something close to pity. "I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourselves." He turned to Lily. "I'll be checking out in the morning. You two can decide what to do with the rest of your conference days." Tina and David returned to their room in silence. Only when the door closed behind them did David finally allow himself to crumble, sinking onto the bed as the full weight of what had happened and what he'd done washed over him. Tina sat beside him, not speaking, simply being present as he faced the wreckage of his marriage. Back home 2 days later, David wasn't surprised when Principal Hargrove called requesting an immediate meeting. The live stream had been recorded, downloaded, and shared countless times. It had even made the local news, though names were withheld, small comfort given that everyone in their community knew exactly who was involved. David dressed carefully in his best suit, the one he usually reserved for parent-teacher nights. In the administration building, he was directed not to Hargrove's office but to the conference room where the entire school board waited. Their expressions ranged from sympathetic to uncomfortable to stern. "Mr. Carter," began Hargrove, "we've called this emergency meeting to address the situation that has come to light involving yourself, Mrs. Carter, and Mr. Reeves." David nodded, maintaining the same calm demeanor he'd shown at the restaurant. "I understand, and I appreciate your time. I have brought copies of the signed confessions, as well as documentation of the falsified conference registration." He placed a folder on the table. Board member Jenkins, a retired judge, reviewed the papers with a practiced eye. "These appear to be in order," he confirmed. "Mr. Carter, while we sympathize with your personal situation, the public nature of your revelation has created significant disruption to our school community." David met his gaze steadily. "With respect, Mr. Jenkins, I didn't create the disruption. I merely exposed it. Would the board prefer that teachers conduct secret affairs, lie to administration about their whereabouts, and deceive their spouses while presenting themselves as moral authorities to students?" Jenkins cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "That's not what I believe what Mr. Jenkins is trying to say," interrupted Dr. Chin, the board president, "is that there were perhaps more discreet ways to handle the situation." Another board member, Mrs. Gonzalez, spoke up. "I disagree. Mr. Carter discovered a profound betrayal, both personal and professional. His wife and Mr. Reeves violated school policy by falsifying professional development records. They misused taxpayer funds if Mrs. Carter was being paid for conference days. While the public nature of the revelation was unconventional, Mr. Carter himself violated no policies." The room fell silent as her words sank in. Finally, Principal Hargrove spoke again. "Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter, and Mr. Reeves have been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. However, we see no reason for your teaching duties to be interrupted. The board acknowledges that this is a deeply personal matter that unfortunately became professional due to the parties involved." David nodded. "Thank you. I intend to continue teaching with the same dedication I've always shown. My students shouldn't suffer because of this situation." As he stood to leave, Dr. Chin added, "The parents have been surprisingly supportive of you, Mr. Carter. Many have commented on your composure and integrity despite extreme provocation." David paused at the door. "Integrity isn't just something we teach, Dr. Chin. It's something we demonstrate, especially when it's difficult." With that, he walked out, back straight, head high, though his heart still felt shattered inside his chest. Word spread quickly through Prairie Valley High School that Mr. Carter would be returning to his classroom while Mrs. Carter and Coach Reeves would not. David's first day back was surreal. Students fell silent when he entered rooms. Conversations halted in hallways when he passed, and colleagues offered awkward smiles or sympathetic nods. But by lunchtime, something unexpected happened. Kim Rodriguez, a senior in his AP biology class, stopped at his desk after the bell rang. "Mr. Carter," she said hesitantly, "we just wanted you to know. We think you're really brave." Behind her, several other students nodded in agreement. Tyler Jenkins, a usually reticent sophomore, added, "My dad said you showed us what integrity looks like when it's really hard. That's more important than anything in the textbooks." David was momentarily speechless, touched by their support when he'd expected judgment or mockery. The afternoon brought more surprises. Parents emailed with messages of solidarity. Teachers left coffee or snacks in his classroom with simple notes, "We're here for you," or "This too shall pass." Even Mr. Rhodes, the curmudgeonly history teacher who rarely spoke to anyone, stopped him in the parking lot. "Tough situation, Carter. Handled it with class. Need anything, you let me know. That night, for the first time since discovering Lily's betrayal, David slept soundly. The community he'd feared would ostracize him had instead rallied around him. Meanwhile, across town, Lily sat alone in their house, the house he couldn't bear to return to yet, reading comments online about herself and Brandon, watching as their reputations crumbled post by post, message by message. The affair that had seemed so exciting, so worth the risk, now left her with nothing but regret and public shame. 3 weeks later, an unexpected email arrived in David's inbox. Subject line: Teaching Opportunity, Westridge Science Academy. Westridge was an elite magnet school in a city 2 hours away, known for its cutting-edge science program and exceptional student achievements. The email was direct: "We've been following your recent situation with interest. Your handling of a difficult personal and professional crisis demonstrated remarkable character. We have an opening for a department chair in our chemistry division beginning next semester. Would you consider applying?" David stared at the screen, heart racing. Westridge was the kind of school teachers dreamed about: well-funded, supportive administration, passionate students. It was also far enough away to represent a fresh start. Before he could talk himself out of it, he clicked reply and began typing his response. That same afternoon, papers were delivered to Lily, divorce filings citing irreconcilable differences and adultery. David had been staying with his brother since returning from the resort, unable to face the home they'd shared, the bed they'd slept in. Lily called immediately. "David, please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Can we just talk about this? I made a terrible mistake. I'll do anything. Counseling, whatever you want." David's response was quiet but firm. "The papers are pretty straightforward, Lily. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. The house is yours, I don't want it. Just sign and let's both move on." "Move on," she echoed. "After 8 years? You're just throwing everything away." The irony of her accusation wasn't lost on him. "No, Lily. You threw it away. I'm just acknowledging what's already broken." The interview at Westridge went remarkably well. The principal, Dr. Whitman, was straightforward. "We don't normally hire mid-year, Mr. Carter, but your reputation precedes you. Not just the recent events, but your teaching record. Your former students who've come to us speak highly of your methods." David appreciated the professional focus. "To be clear," Dr. Whitman continued, "we're not offering you this position because we're impressed by how you exposed your wife's affair. We're offering it because throughout an incredibly painful personal crisis, you maintained your professional standards and showed remarkable restraint and dignity. Those are qualities we value." 2 days later, the job offer arrived, department chair with a substantial salary increase. David accepted immediately. Meanwhile, the school board had reached their decision regarding Lily and Brandon. Neither would return to Prairie Valley High. Instead, they were being reassigned to different schools in the district, effectively a demotion as both new positions were in struggling schools with challenging student populations. The official reason given was administrative reorganization, but everyone knew the truth. Brandon accepted his reassignment without comment. Lily fought it, arguing that her personal life shouldn't impact her career. The irony of this position, given that she had mixed the personal and professional by having an affair with a colleague, was not lost on the board. Her appeal was denied. When she received news of David's new position at Westridge, she drove to his brother's house, desperate to speak with him one last time. "You're really leaving?" she asked, standing on the porch, not invited inside. "The job starts in January," he confirmed. "Lily, there's nothing left to discuss." "I still love you," she whispered. David looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the discovery. "If you loved me," he said finally, "you wouldn't have done this." As December faded into January, David prepared for his final week at Prairie Valley. He'd sold or donated most of his furniture, packed his books and personal items, and signed a lease on an apartment near Westridge. The divorce was proceeding smoothly. Lily had eventually signed the papers without further argument. Only one task remained. On his last evening in town, David drove to their house, Lily's house now, and parked in the driveway. He'd timed his visit carefully. She would be at her weekly therapy session, something she'd started after the affair became public. Inside, using his key for the final time, he placed a sealed envelope on the kitchen counter where she would find it. He didn't linger. This house held too many memories, both beautiful and painful. As he drove away, he reflected on the strange path his life had taken. For months ago, he had been a contented husband, respected teacher, with a predictable future. Now he was starting over, new job, new city, new life. The letter he'd left wasn't filled with anger or accusations. He'd moved beyond that. Instead, it contained the closure they both needed. Lily, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not running away, but moving forward. I've accepted that what we had is over, not just because you were unfaithful, but because what that revealed about us. I wasn't perfect either. I got comfortable. I took you for granted sometimes. I didn't see that you were unhappy. That doesn't excuse what you did, but I understand more now about how we got here. The letter continued, I'm not writing to hurt you further or to rehash the past. I'm writing because despite everything, you were my wife for 8 years. We shared a life, dreams, failures, successes. That deserves a proper goodbye. I hope you find happiness, Lily. I hope Brandon was worth it, or if not him, that someone else will be. I hope you learn from this, as I have. I'm grateful for the good years and what they taught me. I know now what I need in a partner: honesty, loyalty, courage. Things I thought we shared but didn't. I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. I can't carry this anger anymore. It's too heavy. Take care of yourself. David. He placed the key to the house in the envelope with the letter, a symbolic relinquishing of their shared past. The next morning dawned clear and cold. David loaded the last of his belongings into his car and prepared to leave the town where he'd taught for 12 years. What he didn't expect was the scene that greeted him as he drove past the high school. Students, teachers, and parents lined the street, holding signs, "We'll miss you, Mr. Carter. Good luck. Westridge is lucky to have you." Principal Hargrove stood at the front, raising his hand in salute as David slowed his car, overwhelmed by the display. For a community often divided by petty conflicts, they had united to show support for a man who had faced betrayal with dignity. David rolled down his window. "Thank you," he called, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you all." As he drove away, the crowd cheered and waved, their support following him like a blessing. 6 months later, David stood in his new classroom at Westridge, surrounded by state-of-the-art equipment and bright, engaged students. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. Grief for a failed marriage never vanishes completely, but it had transformed into something manageable, something that no longer defined his days. He'd made friends among his colleagues, joined a community theater group, started hiking on weekends. Life had developed a new rhythm. His phone buzzed with a text from Tina. "Thought you'd want to know, Brandon transferred to a school in Nevada. Left 2 weeks ago. Lily's alone now." David stared at the message, surprised by his own lack of reaction. Once, this news would have brought satisfaction, even vindication. Now, it was just information, disconnected from his daily life. He typed back, "Thanks for telling me. Hope you're well." Nothing more needed to be said. Across town from his old life, in a small apartment she could barely afford on her reduced salary, Lily sat alone reading David's letter for the 100th time. The paper had grown soft from handling, the creases deep and permanent. Brandon had left without much explanation. Just a note saying this was too complicated, and he needed a fresh start. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd sacrificed everything for a relationship that hadn't survived the first sign of adversity. No one had heard from David directly, but rumors of his success at Westridge circulated. Former students who'd visited him reported he seemed happy, fulfilled. Meanwhile, parents still requested their children be transferred from Lily's class. Colleagues remained polite but distant. The scarlet letter of her affair hadn't faded. If anything, in their small community, it had become more vibrant with time. 1 year to the day after David discovered the affair, he received an unexpected package. Inside was a leather-bound scrapbook filled with messages from his former Prairie Valley students. The note attached read, "Mr. Carter, we wanted you to know your impact continues even after you've gone. You taught us more than science. You taught us integrity has a price worth paying. Thank you." Each page contained personal notes, photographs, memories of his teaching. The final page held a news clipping. Westridge Science Academy's team had won the state championship in the academic decathlon, with special recognition for their exceptional performance in the science portion. The coach quoted was David Carter. He traced his fingers over the faces of his former students, then carefully placed the scrapbook on his living room bookshelf. Not hidden away with painful memories, but displayed prominently as part of his journey. That same evening, Lily sat in a therapy session, working through her ongoing struggles. "I lost everything," she admitted. "My husband, my reputation, my friend circle. Even Brandon left." Her therapist nodded. "And what have you learned?" Lily was quiet for a long moment. "That actions have consequences. That integrity matters. That I need to be honest with others, but mostly with myself." She wiped away a tear. "David sent me a letter before he left. He said he forgave me. Not for my sake, but for his. I didn't understand then, but I think I'm starting to now. Forgiveness isn't about making the other person feel better. It's about freeing yourself." The therapist smiled gently. "That sounds like growth, Lily. Perhaps the most valuable lesson from all of this." 2 years after the night that changed everything, David stood at the front of an auditorium accepting the Teacher of the Year award from the State Board of Education. His department at Westridge had flourished under his leadership, with record numbers of students pursuing science in college. As he gave his acceptance speech, he reflected on his journey. "Education isn't just about formulas and facts," he told the audience. "It's about showing students how to face life's challenges with grace and resilience. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from our darkest moments." In the audience, his new girlfriend, Emma, a literature teacher he'd met at Westridge, smiled encouragingly. They'd been dating for 6 months, taking things slowly, building a foundation of honesty and trust. David had been open about his past, and Emma had appreciated his candor. Life hadn't turned out as he'd planned, but perhaps it had turned out exactly as it needed to. Across the state, Lily was starting over too. She'd finally left teaching, recognizing that the classroom no longer brought her joy. Instead, she'd returned to school herself, pursuing a degree in counseling. Her experience had shown her how quickly life could unravel from poor choices, and she hoped to help others avoid similar mistakes. She still thought of David sometimes, wondering if he was happy, if he'd found someone new. She hoped so. His final words to her had been about forgiveness, and in time she'd learned to forgive herself too. Not to erase what she'd done, but to move forward with the wisdom it had brought her. Some lessons came at a terrible price, but they were no less valuable for their cost. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more compelling content, and share with friends who appreciate stories about resilience and integrity. What would you have done in David's position? Let us know in the comments below.